Hello everyone, it's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Today, finally, I was able to make another tutorial videos about saxophone playing, and we're going to discuss how to play overtones and altissimos, which is quite challenging when you're working on it, and I'm particularly excited to share my personal approach and also a specific tips to share with you. It's a challenging topic because there are a lot of ambiguities going on inside of our mouth when we apply overtones and altissimos. It's because we can't really show you how inside of our mouth is working. I'm going to skip what overtones and altissimos are, assuming you already know them. But in case if you don't know them yet, I'm going to list some of YouTube links explained by other saxophone teachers in the description, so please check them out. I am particularly excited to talk about today's topic because I personally did my extensive research on the topic of overtone and altissimos and what's happening inside of a mouth when I was working on my doctoral thesis. So if you really want to know in detail, I'm going to also attach a link to my paper so you could also check them out. Before getting into talking about how to play overtones, I think it's going to be helpful to explain how it is achieved theoretically, and then I'm going to share with you 4 specific tips. First, I want to talk about mechanics of playing overtones and how it is achieved. So you're all familiar with fingering the lowest B flat on saxophone and try to play the higher partials without changing the fingerings. So the answer is it has to do with air pressure inside of our mouth. When I was doing research, I experimented with saxophonists when they were playing overtones and altissimos, and I used a device called manometer to measure the changes of air pressure inside of their mouth. And there was a significant changes inside of saxophonists' mouths when they were playing the overtones. I will give you the conclusion. If you increase the air pressure, the airspeed will slow down, and the slow airspeed will cause the reed to vibrate a little bit slower, thus creating mellower sound and also bring the pitch down. It's based on the theory of Bernoulli's principle and the law of conservation of energy. In the Bernoulli's principle, when liquid goes through a narrow space, it speeds up by decreasing its density. It's because the liquid is already quite in a dense state, so it cannot be compressed anymore. Now, in terms of air, it acts differently. Air molecules are still spread out, so there's a space to compress it. If you compress the air, it becomes heavier. The heavier air will have more mass, thus it slows down the speed. So that's what's happening inside of our mouth when we are creating a narrower space in our oral cavity. We are compressing the air, and by compressing the air, it makes it heavier, thus we are creating a slower airflow, which is affecting the reed. On the contrary, if you decrease the air pressure inside of your mouth, it allows air to speed up. So the faster airflow will affect the reed and let it vibrate faster, thus creating much brighter sound or emphasizing the higher partials, or it can even create a squeaky sound. This is especially true when we're trying to play that high overtones or high altissimos. Now, every reed has something called its natural frequency. What it is if we let the reed to vibrate by itself, it's going to create around 2000 or 3000 hertz of the pitch, which is pretty high and pretty squeaky. And I can demonstrate it to you how it's going to sound just using the mouthpiece and neck. So take out your neck and try to inhale from end of your neck. So theoretically, now you understand it's possible to compress the air inside of our mouth, and that's very important to be able to play the overtones. So we have to create the narrower space inside of our oral cavity, which brings us to the tip number 1. Create hissing sound. Hissing sound is a sound created by a high tongue position and narrower oral cavity. It sounds like this. You can hear kind of a fricative, turbulent air sound, and that's only possible if we create really extremely narrower airspace inside of our oral cavity. Usually, teachers tell students to use high tongue position, and this will give you the same result. However, there's a problem. Using hissing sound only does not give us a strong air pressure which allow us to play overtones and altissimos. And I think this has been the most challenging aspect of playing overtones, because you need to combine the high tongue position, which creates the hissing sound, and something else to create the highest increase of air pressure, which allow us to play the overtones. So you have to also manipulate the space around your neck, which is called larynx, which brings us to tip number 2. Lower your Adam's apple. Now, vocal tract is comprised of 3 different spaces: the oral cavity, pharynx, which is around your neck, and then larynx, which is on your throat, where Adam's apple is located. Manipulating your oral cavity is actually not good enough. We also have to manipulate the space around your neck and throat in order to really create the highest air pressure point. Now, logic is this. Air needs to be compressed in order to create a high air pressure. So air needs to go through a narrow space, but it needs to come from the bigger space in order to be really compressed. So we have to create a bigger space inside of our throat and larynx. And in order to do that, we have to lower our Adam's apple. It should give you a sensation of yawning. Oh, if you yawn, oh. If you do that, it lowers Adam's apple. Now, actual function of Adam's apple is to go upwards. It's because when you are eating or drinking water, we have to make sure that those liquid and food needs to go through your stomach, not to your lungs. So this Adam's apple go up to seal the airflow so that you're not going to die from it. That's the only function. So to lower the Adam's apple is really against the design of human body and against the nature. So we have to do something really awkward when we are playing saxophone. So best way to practice is say hissing sound first and then try to lower your Adam's apple by kind of yawning. So it's going to look like this. And you can see I'm still keeping the hissing sound, but there's a quality of sound when I lower the Adam's apple. That's the moment we were able to really increase the air pressure. Once you can say the hissing sound combined with lowering the Adam's apple, it's time for tip number 3. Practice pitch bending. I want to finger a palm key D, and without changing the fingerings and embouchure, I want to be able to lower the pitch by major third to get to the B flat. Now, when you're doing this, make sure your embouchure is not changing. Usually, when we're trying to practice the pitch bending, students tend to loosen the embouchure, which will create kind of airy sound. So you have to make sure your embouchure is very tight and steady when we are practicing the pitch bending. I want to try combining these 3 elements: tight embouchure, hissing sound, and Adam's apple, and see if you can bend the pitch from D to B flat. Tip number 4, use A or O vowels to play extremely high altissimos. So I mentioned that in order to get to the really extreme high overtones or altissimos, you need to decrease the air pressure inside of your mouth. So in order to decrease the air pressure, you have to create completely open space inside of a vocal tract. In order to do this, we have to use A or O vowels. As you can see in the picture, it's quite open. So usually I want to say something like ha or ho when we are playing the high altissimo, which decrease the air pressure and really allow it to vibrate as much as we can. So I want to try these 4 tips when you're working on overtones and altissimos. I also recommend using some of the method books that are available. For example, Voicing by Donald Sinta, Top Tones by Cigarette Rusher, and Saxophone High Tones by Eugene Rousseau. These are great books to cultivate your practice and strengthen your skills. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment or contact me directly. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.